Hey, aloha everyone. Michelle Melendez with blossominnerwellness.com, standtogetherhawaii.com, and this is also on the Voice of Kona Radio, which is 100.5 FM. So you can listen online on the islands or online is voiceofkonaradio.com. So today I have spliced up the Tucker Carlson interview with President Vladimir Putin of Russia, and it is quite interesting. Now, I don't know if what he's saying is true because I'm not up in the with the high wigs up there, but it is quite interesting to listen to him. The splices that I'm going to share are what he thinks about the U.S. dollar and the U.S. economy and inflation of the U.S. dollar and who's responsible for that. We're going to talk about how he feels about China. We're going to talk about the relations that he was working toward with the United States. We're going to talk about peace negotiations in Ukraine. And one other thing with the missile defense and what he wanted to do, or what he says that he proposed to the United States. Really, really interesting. But first, before we start with all that, I do want to do a quick shout out to the sponsor of my channel because one, they're really helpful in what's going on right now. So divorcing the state, this is aceofcoins.club that you can see. You can go to the privacy fighting video series. This is about your biometric data, licensing your biometric data. If you have challenges or questions with taxes or with accounting of how to make those more beneficial for you, if you have any questions about crypto and how to get crypto with zero tax consequences, aceofcoins.com is who you want to check out, aceofcoins.com. So go and check them out. Tell them Michelle sent you, and you'll be better off for it, that's for sure. Okay, so I am going to share my screen with Tucker Carlson, and I'm actually going to pause the video for a moment, actually, because I forgot to go grab my notes. Let me just do that. Okay, I re-got my notes. Here we go. This first part is on relations with the U.S. Very interesting. And again, I'm not sure, but this is what he
the
says.
events in the Middle East, in Iraq. We were building relations with the United States in a very soft, prudent, cautious manner. I repeatedly raised the issue that the United States should not support separatism or terrorism in the North Caucasus. But they continue to do it anyway. And political support, information support, financial support, even military support came from the United States and its satellites for terrorist groups in the Caucasus. I once raised this issue with my colleague, also the President of the United States. He says, "It's impossible. Do you have proof?" I said, "Yes." I was prepared for this conversation, and I gave him that proof. He looked at it, and you know what he said? "I apologize, but that's what happened." I'll quote. He says, "Well, I'm gonna kick their ass." We waited and waited for some response. There was no reply. I said to...
So I believe what he's saying is that he showed the President of the United States proof that they were supporting these people that were actually separatists against Russia, and the president said, "Well, I'm going to kick their ass to whomever is in charge of doing this." Is what my interpretation of this is. And then they waited for a response back from who the president is checking in with to see if it's true that the U.S. was supporting people against Russia. And again, this is what the president of Russia says, not me. I don't know if this is true or not.
FSB director, write to the CIA, what is the result of the conversation with President? He wrote once, twice, and then we got a reply. We have the answer in the archive. The CIA replied, "We have been working with the opposition in Russia. We believe that this is the right thing to do, and we will keep on doing it." Just ridiculous. Well, okay. We realized that it was out of the question.
Forces in opposition to you. So you're saying the CIA is trying to overthrow your government?
Of course, they meant in that particular case the separatists, the terrorists who fought with us in the Caucasus.
So again, I don't know if this is true. This is just what he's saying, and I think it's really interesting. I want to show you guys the next part which is about this missile defense, that he wanted to work together with the U.S. At least this is what he says. It's what he claims. And yeah, let's listen to this next juicy piece.
Place on the ocean, I had a very serious conversation with President Bush and his team. I proposed that the United States, Russia, and Europe jointly create a missile defense system that, we believe, if created unilaterally, threatens our security, despite the fact that the United States officially said that it was being created against missile threats from Iran. That was the justification for the deployment of the missile defense system. I suggested working together, Russia, the United States, and Europe. They said it was very interesting. They asked me, "Are you serious?" I said, "Absolutely."
Let me ask, what year was this?
He asks what year. I'm just going to skip that part because there's a little bit of back and forth that doesn't really matter. Or just stick it there. Oh, 3706. All right, let's just stay here.
Of Bush Sr. It is even easier to learn from someone I'm going to tell you about.
He basically says, well, ask the president, check in with when he was there in the United States is what is the year. He's like, he can't remember the year. Tucker kind of gives him shift for that. He's like, what do you mean you can't remember the year? And then I guess I should have just played it for you guys. But anyway, here we go.
I was told it was very interesting. I said, just imagine if we could tackle such a global strategic security challenge together. The world will change. We'll probably have disputes, probably economic and even political ones, but we could drastically change the situation in the world. He says yes, and asks, "Are you serious?" I said, "Of course. We need to think about it," I'm told. I said, "Go ahead, please." Then Secretary of Defense Gates, former Director of CIA, and Secretary of State Rice came in here, in this cabinet, right here at this table. They sat on this table. Me, the Foreign Minister, the Russian Defense Minister on that side. They said to me, "Yes, we have thought about it. We agree." I said, "Thank God, great, but with some exceptions."
So twice you've described U.S. presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads. So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who were elected in your telling.
That's right, that's right. In the end, they just told us to get lost. I'm not going to tell you the details because I think it's incorrect. After all, it was confidential conversation. But our proposal was declined, that's a fact. It was right then when I said, "Look, but then we will be forced to take countermeasures. We will create such strike systems that will certainly overcome missile defense systems."
So then he goes on to share that they do have a system that will counter any missiles. So he claims that he wanted to do the missile defense operations together with the U.S. Wouldn't that have been amazing? I mean, that's off the charts. That really would have been something. So I want to go now to the peace talks in Ukraine, and what's up with that? Like, why can't there be peace talks in Ukraine? So this whole first half hour of this is he tells the history of Ukraine, which is quite interesting, but it's really long. So I'm going to just go here, and this is about peace talks with Ukraine.
Will there be talks, and why haven't there been talks about resolving the conflict in Ukraine, peace talks?
Они были, они дошли до очень высокой стадии согласования позиций.
They have been. They reached a very high stage of coordination of positions in a complex process, but still they were almost finalized. But after we withdrew our troops from Kiev, as I have already said, the other side threw away all these agreements and obeyed the instructions of Western countries, European countries, and the United States to fight Russia to the bitter end. Moreover, the president of Ukraine has legislated a ban on negotiating with Russia. He signed a decree forbidding everyone to negotiate with Russia.
So he sets the president sets a decree for everybody to not negotiate with Russia for peace. I mean, that's very interesting. And now I want to go over here. Well, let me go a little bit longer because I have a little bit longer to go on this one.
But how are we
Right.
going to negotiate if he forbade himself and everyone to do this? We know that he is putting forward some ideas about this settlement, but in order to agree on something, we need to have a dialogue. Is that right?
Yeah. So so he talks about that, and then I want to go to 106:20. Can't remember what this one's about, but it's on my notes.
Let's work this out.
What's there to work out? It's very simple. I repeat, we have contacts through various agencies. I will tell you what we are saying on this matter and what we are conveying to the US leadership. If you really want to stop fighting, you need to stop supplying weapons. It will be over within a few weeks. That's it. And then we can agree on some terms. Before you do that, stop. What's easier? Why would I call him? What should I talk to him about? Or beg him for what?
And what messages do you get back?
You're going to deliver such and such weapons to Ukraine? Oh, I'm afraid, please don't. What is there to talk about?
Do you think NATO is worried about this becoming a global war or a nuclear conflict?
At least that's what they're talking about. And they're trying to intimidate their own population with an imaginary Russian threat. This is an obvious fact. And thinking people, not Philistines, but thinking people, analysts, those who are engaged in real politics, just smart people, understand perfectly well that this is a fake.
So he's saying that that's propaganda, and this is the next part I want to share about the Russian threat. And this is what this Russian president is saying. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm just sharing it. It's not coming out of my mouth.
There are certainly means of deterrence. They have been scaring everyone with us all along. Tomorrow Russia will use tactical nuclear weapons. Tomorrow Russia will use that. No, the day after tomorrow. So what? In order to extort additional money from US taxpayers and European taxpayers in the confrontation with Russia in the Ukrainian theater of war. The goal...
Now there's definitely Ukrainian theater of war. Theater, you guys. Have you ever heard, this is the acting governor. Everything is theater, friends.
Is to weaken Russia as much as possible.
One of our senior United States senators from the state of New York, Chuck Schumer, said yesterday, I believe, that we have to continue to fund the Ukrainian effort, or U.S. soldiers, citizens could wind up fighting there. How do you assess that?
This is interesting.
This is a provocation, and a cheap provocation at that. I do not understand why American soldiers should fight in Ukraine. There are mercenaries from the United States there. The bigger number of mercenaries comes from Poland, with mercenaries from the United States in second place, and mercenaries from Georgia in third place. Well, if somebody has the desire to send regular troops, that would certainly bring humanity to the brink of very serious global conflict. This is obvious. Do the United States need this? What for? Thousands of miles away from your national territory. Don't you have anything better to do?
I thought that was really interesting. So at the very beginning, a half an hour, he talks about the history of Ukraine. And he also talks about how they told that NATO was getting stronger. And he was saying, don't bring anybody else into NATO because we're not going to have NATO on our borders. And that's when NATO Ukraine was in NATO. So let me go through the U.S. dollar. What does he think about the U.S. dollar and inflation, and who's responsible for this? This is pretty interessante, you guys.
Over the world.
So it'll be a couple seconds and then it'll start.
Примерно 3-4, что ли. Вот,
What does the Russian president think of the dollar?
абсолютно.
Inflation in the United States is minimal. It's about 3 or 3.4%, which is, I think, totally acceptable for the US. But they won't stop printing. What does the debt of $33 trillion tell us about? It is about the emission.
Как только политическое руководство приняло решение использовать доллар в качестве инструмента политической борьбы,
Nevertheless, it is the main weapon used by the United States to preserve its power across the world.
поэтому американцы
As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power.
и огромные
I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake.
сокращаются запасы доллара сейчас.
Keeps going.
Все смотрят на то, что происходит, и начинают искать возможность.
Look at what is going on in the world. Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world.
В России мы
What did we have here? Until 2022, about 80% of Russian foreign trade transactions were made in US dollars.
Okay, did you hear that? 80% of Russian trade was made in US dollars
Euros.
and euros.
расчетах с третьими странами. Значит,
US dollars accounted for approximately 50% of our transactions with third
Okay,
countries.
so so with third world countries, 50% of their transactions was made in the US dollar.
Currently, it is down to 13%. It wasn't us who banned the use of the US dollar.
США приняли решение ограничить наши расчеты в долларах.
We had no such intention.
Полная дурь.
It was decision of the United States to restrict our transactions in US dollars. I think it is complete foolishness from the point of view of the interests of the United States itself and its taxpayers, as it damages the US economy, undermines the power of the United States across the world.
So they're not the ones that stopped using it. They were forced to stop using it because of sanctions, or restrictions. Very interesting.
By the way, our transactions in yuan accounted for about 3%.
Сейчас 34%
Today, 34% of our transactions are made in rubles and about as much,
столько же 30.
a little over 34% in yuan.
Зачем Соединенные Штаты это сделали?
Why did the United States do this? My only guess is self-conceit.
Думали, наверное, что
They
всё
probably thought it would lead to full collapse, but nothing collapsed. Moreover, other countries, including oil producers, are thinking of and already accepting payments for oil in yuan. Do you even realize what is going on or not?
Ну, вы понимаете, что это такое происходит?
Does anyone in the United States realize this?
Понимает это в тех же Соединенных Штатах? Что
What are you doing? You are cutting yourself
сами
off.
себе
All
обрезаете
experts say this.
So I've said this before, and many experts have said, the dollar is a little on shaky ground. I have promoted getting into precious metals or silver and gold. This is not financial advice, but this is what I have done, as well as hard assets, and we have said that. And things are going. We don't know what's going to be happening in the future, but just kind of cover your butt. Maybe take some and put it into real estate if you can, some gems, and just save your assets, or save your the US dollar from save your wealth from just being in US dollars. Okay, one of the last things I want to share is what he thinks about China. What he thinks about China. It's really interesting.
убиваете.
I think that's a fair assessment. The question is what comes next.
Конечно.
And maybe you trade one colonial power for another, much less sentimental and forgiving colonial power. I mean, is the BRICS, for example, in danger of being completely dominated by the Chinese economy in a way that's not good for their sovereignty? Do you worry about that?
Well, we have heard those boogeyman stories before. It is a boogeyman story. We're neighbors with China. You cannot choose neighbors just as you cannot choose close relatives. We share a border of 1,000 kilometers with them. This is number one. Second, we have a centuries-long history of coexistence. We're used to it. Third, China's foreign policy philosophy is not aggressive. Its idea is to always look for compromise, and we can see that.
Have you ever heard that? I've never heard that the Chilean foreign policy is to look for compromise. I've never heard that before. And again, this is coming from the president of a different country. I don't know if it's true or not.
The next point is as follows. We are always told the same boogeyman story, and here it goes again, through an euphemistic form, but it is still the same boogeyman story. The cooperation with China keeps increasing. The pace at which China's cooperation with Europe is growing is higher and greater than that of the growth of Chinese-Russian cooperation. Ask Europeans, aren't they afraid? They might be, I don't know. But they are still trying to access China's market at all costs, especially now that they are facing economic problems. Chinese businesses are also exploring the European market. Do Chinese businesses have small presence in the United States? Yes, the political decisions are such that they are trying to limit their cooperation with China. It is to your own detriment, Mr. Tucker, that you are limiting cooperation with China. You are hurting yourself. It is a delicate matter, and there are no silver bullet solutions, just as it is with the dollar.
So that's what I wanted to share. There's more. He talks about numerous things. Very, very interesting. But I know it's 2 hours, and a lot of people are like, that's so long. And so I told somebody I would split it up and do some of this stuff I thought was important. This again is from a foreign president. It's not my opinion. I don't know if what he's saying is true. I'm saying that for various reasons, and you all know why. But I just find it really interesting to hear these subjects from instead of our mainstream news that is owned by the U.S. corporation that runs the country. Hearing it from a foreign president is quite interesting. So don't know if it's true or not, but that's what he said, and I wanted to share that with you. So let's do a quick prayer and call this completion. Great Spirit, infinite intelligence of all things, just so much gratitude for the truth and the light that's shining on the entire world, that's shining in Russia and Ukraine, that's shining in Israel and Palestine, and shining in Europe and China and Africa and Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Mexico, the mainland United States of America, and the Hawaii Islands. And I just give so much appreciation and gratitude for Tucker Carlson and for Vladimir Putin for doing an interview together, and that we know what is true in our hearts, that we can feel what is true and right for our country. I love America. I love freedom. I love sovereignty. I love free speech. I love the Constitution that protects our unalienable rights. And I know that this world is becoming a better place for interviews like this, for showing the different side of what do other people who live in other places around the world, what are their beliefs, and how are they running their own country, and what are their goals for the future, and how do they want to work with the United States of America. And Great Spirit, I just know that you are guiding every single one of us to do what is our kuleana. And I'm so, so grateful for the freedom and peace that is showing up every single day, more and more and more, as the darkness dissipates from the planet, as those who do not serve humanity in light and in love and in freedom are peaceably removed from office or voluntarily stepped down, which is happening all the time. So Great Spirit, I just thank you so much for that, because we get to watch as things unfold, as this world becomes a better place. I know it is done, and so it is. Sending you so much aloha from the big island of Hawaii. Keep yourself safe, and definitely, if you have a ton of dollars, maybe look into some precious metals, maybe look into getting some real estate or something else that's more tangible. Again, that's just what I would do and not financial advice. I love you guys. Much aloha.